One of the statements that was used to me is that couples that drink ayahuasca together grow together. I don't care who you are, like if you're there with a spouse and you're going through potential separation, my experiences in those journeys challenged me in a way that was extremely painful, and it got me to a place where I was totally comfortable with my marriage ending if that's what needed to happen. Even though it turned out really well for me and my wife, I'm sure there's some stories on the other side of the pendulum as well.
Hello, welcome to the Conscious Collaboration. I'm Jarrod.
I'm Chris.
Today we are going to dive into a very commonly asked question in regards to should I attend a ayahuasca or plant medicine ceremony with my partner, my spouse, wife, husband? And It's a really interesting question that a lot of people do ask, and I'm sure pops into a lot of people's minds when going to work with plant medicine.
Totally. Yeah. I know for me, when I first started going down into the world of ayahuasca, right? Like plant medicine specifically, my first experience with any plant medicine was actually ayahuasca, and I was actually told by a coaching group that I should do this for myself, but that if I had the opportunity, I should do it with my spouse. One of the statements that was used to me is that couples that drink ayahuasca together grow together. And it was interesting because I had no experience, right? And so I'm really curious to hear, and I'll share my story because we ended up doing it,
Absolutely.
as you know, because that's where we met initially. But that said, I know that even though it turned out really well for me and my wife, I'm sure there's some stories on the other side of the pendulum as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of pros, There is some cons, obviously, to it as well, which we can sort of go into as we go along. And you sort of touched on it beforehand as well, like people who drink together stay together. It can be really, really powerful for fortifying a relationship or potentially working through our own personal challenges to really bring the relationship together as well.
For sure.
I guess, like, even to begin with, probably if people are asking this question and they're looking at doing ceremony, there's got to be a couple of different aspects. I think it's really important that if a couple are going to do ayahuasca together, that they are both going as individuals. Would you agree?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. I would say for me, the funny part about that, so when we went down, my wife and I were going through some stuff, right? And even contemplating separation, divorce, that kind of stuff. It was a big deal. It was a really challenging time in life. So it's one of those situations, for me at least, it was some work that I had to really work on. And it wasn't naturally. I remember having conversations with you as I was going through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there were some I don't care who you are, like if you're there with a spouse and you're going through potential separation, that's a hard wall to put up, to be like, all right, I'm just here for myself. But I will say this, for me, the better I got at that, and honestly, a couple of my first journeys, I wasn't the best at that. And my experiences in those journeys challenged me in a way that was extremely painful and extremely hard. But I think it was just all part of the process. And it got me to a place where, ironically, I was totally comfortable with my marriage ending if that's what needed to happen. Yeah. And at the same time, because I got to that level of comfort, my wife and I ended up staying together, and our relationship not only stayed together, but it's better than it's ever been, because it's, I think, coming from a much healthier place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good example of a scenario where it has worked really, really well. Yeah. You've got two people that both have opportunities for personal growth and personal healing. They're both coming to the medicine or whatever it might be, the ceremony, with the reverence of, hey, I want to work on myself. My partner wants to work on themselves as well, and we're going to come and do some work. And hopefully out of this process together, we're going to make some really decent progress in our relationship. Probably that's like a really good scenario and a really good example, which we can get into a little bit as well, which is really cool. One thing I have seen though, like sometimes as well, is you have one person who is really looking to do the work. You know, one person who is going through a tough time, wanting to work on some trauma, wanting to work on potentially depression, anxiety, whatever it might be, and the other person in the relationship might not necessarily be at a point where they feel like they need to work with plant medicine.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's anything in life, right? Like you got to be on the same page, and you can't do this. I mean, there's certain elements of it you can be there to support your spouse and like whatever. But if you're going to work with the medicine, at least for me, like, you know, you get into it, you're going to get into things that maybe you're not ready for, or like it's going to bring up challenges, and I think it's one of those things like. Well, there was another couple that was there that we saw, and you know, I don't know how things ended up for them, but they seemed great. But they were much more attached at the hip, so to speak, right? Like, and they were much, and I don't know what they were looking for or whatever, but you know, for me and Hannah, we were kind of like.
Doing your own thing.
Doing our own thing.
Doing your own thing.
And it was because going in, there was some animosity, there was some resentment, and we'd been married for 20 years, so we wanted to make it work, and we loved each other, and we had these things, but we also had like this divide, right? Yeah. And so I think for us, it was easier. We each wanted to work with the medicine to figure our own stuff out, and we went into the trip with the expectation and with the agreement that like, hey, I'm going to work on me. You're going to work on you to the best of our abilities, right? Our intentions are not going to be about let's save the marriage, because that intention is not going to help anybody, in my opinion. I don't know, like I'd love to hear your take on that.
I agree.
Like, because we both agreed like we can't go into this being like let's save our marriage. It was more, if the marriage is struggling, let's each find interdependently, like, and ask like, you know, where am I? Who do I want to be? What do I want the rest of my life to look like? How am I showing up in the world? Am I satisfied with that? Like, and for me, my intention was very simple. It was just like, I don't know what I don't know. Yeah. I know I have parts of me that are holding me back. I know that are parts of me that are self-sabotaging. Yeah. I know that I have all these things that are going on, and I just asked the medicine to show me what I wanted to see, what I needed to see. Yep. And I was just open, like. And I know that's not a very specific intention, but for me going in, I really didn't know. I didn't have like I felt called to work with it, but I didn't know exactly where my blind spots were. Yeah. Right? So to me, I was like, please, ayahuasca, help me see my blind spots. You know what I mean? It's
quite interesting actually, like with your process with ayahuasca as well, because probably out of you and your wife, your wife was like the main driver, motivator.
Yeah, she wanted to do it the most.
Yeah, and I mean, she has definitely got a huge amount out of it, but her process comparatively is very, very different to yours. Yeah, it's a longer process, bite-sized chunks as you move along, where it was quite interesting that you sort of went down there and rolled the dice of, you know, let's have this ayahuasca, you know, stuff.
Well, it's true.
And you ended up sort of coming out of there like a deer in the headlights, like what the fuck just happened,
bro?
You know,
bro, you're not.
And I got a huge amount out of it as well. So did she. Obviously, it was interesting.
She did too. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, we went down there. I mean, full transparency to everybody watching this. Like, we went down there because she was having questions about our marriage. I was not. I was happy. I was totally blindsided, right? And she all of a sudden was uncertain, you know. And she loved me and she wanted it to work. And she's like, okay, I want to get to a place where I'm back there. And so I went down there being like, I don't know what the fuck to do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, my coach told me I should do this, but it was more about like just doing it for me. And then Hannah was like, I've been dying to do ayahuasca, so if you're gonna go do it, I wanna go do it. So I was like, well, let's go do it together. Yeah. You know, and then, but going down, it was interesting because like, I wanted the marriage to work. Like there was no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Like I wanted the marriage to work, and I knew that going down there trying to make the marriage work would be the thing that would kill the marriage. Yep. You know what I mean? Yep. Which is hard. That was super hard. Yeah. I remember sitting on the couch having conversations with you about it. Right? Like, and so like that part of it, I don't even know how to describe it. Like it was I didn't know what I was getting into. I had never done, any kind of mind-altering substance. I had no experience.
I think it's
with
a credit
psychedelics.
to you, though. It's a credit to you, though. Like you're like, this is how much I want. This is how much I want the marriage to work.
Man.
Is that I'm going to go down to South America.
Yeah.
I'm going to drink some shamanic brew in which. I've never been down to. You've never been really down to South America.
Whatever. Yeah.
And a shamanic brew that's been around for thousands of years. And you're like, this could work. This could work.
Well, you know what? Like, I come from a place of leave no stone unturned, right? And so for me, when I had several people telling me about it, and I'd done the whole watch Joe Rogan and Aubrey Marcus and all those guys, about their experiences, and I was like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I wanted to be in a safe place. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be around people that I knew I could trust. I was going to go through and put myself through an experience that I'd never been through before. My whole future of my life was like in front of me. You know what I mean? Like, and I knew, and I didn't know how, and I didn't know what it would feel like, and I had no context.
Yep.
But I knew at the end of the first week that we went, and we ended up doing 2 separate weeks last year. But I knew at the end of that first week, my life would never be the same.
Yeah.
And I didn't know for good, for bad, for like whatever, but I knew it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was going to change. I didn't know if she was going to change. Mm-hmm. I tried to not think about it too much, but I remember getting done. The first 3 journeys that we went on, because we did 4, the first 2 were probably the hardest 2 days of my life. Yeah. The third one was challenging, and then the fourth one was beautiful.
Let me ask you a question. And this is something, in the word circle. So the word circle, for those of you who don't know, is essentially after word circle, sharing circle. It's got many different names. But for those of you who don't know, it's basically after, in the retreat setting, after you do the ceremony, generally the day after, you do a word circle where you'll all get together, led by the facilitator, and sort of talk about your journey. Yes. That is me. Sometimes the shaman will come sometimes as well, depending on what you're talking about. But it's kind of like a group therapy to a degree.
Yeah, it's like part of the integration process.
Yeah, exactly. Where you talk about your experience. Yeah. One thing that I found really interesting with you and Hannah as well, within that group setting of 25 people, you're both very, very open about your experiences, and I think, if we were to look at potentially one of the cons of people coming to an ayahuasca ceremony or retreat with their partner, would be that sometimes I think because we have our own stuff that we're working through, we've got our own energy, you and your partner, but then you also have a collective and you have a life together, and some of the things that you're processing and some of the things that you're going on are very, very intertwined with that partner as well. Yeah. One thing I found really interesting, especially with you and Hannah, is that there was no holds barred, and that's beautiful. And I think that's a really interesting thing to sort of be there. Like you're like, okay, so we're together. We've been together for like 20 odd years, and we're going to sit in front of these 25 people and tell
who just met yesterday,
and go like potentially say some things that are going to piss off my partner over here as well. That must be hard, man. Yeah.
Well, it was, but it's about the agreements that you make going into it. And I think for us, and I wouldn't know best practices, so I'd love to hear your take on this. But for us, we went into it, a lot of our work happened before the ceremony, talking about the fact that, like, hey, we know that we're having a hard time. We're not going to hide from that fact. One of my favorite quotes in the world is, just because the ostrich buries his head in the sand doesn't mean the lion's dinner plans have changed, right? Like, you can't just hide from, like, that's the reason people need ayahuasca, is because you've been burying your head in the sand too long, right? Like, and so we both knew that, and so we knew there were going to be things that would come up. Yeah. I honestly thought it was going to be more stuff on her end that would come up, and ironically, like, I went there to support her, and it ended up me being like railroaded for like 3 days straight, and it was like, what the fuck is happening to my life right now? But like, it all ended up being like beautiful. And we shared, like, we agreed, like, none of it is personal. Yeah. Like, and I think that's the thing, whether it's like what we've seen with Bufo lately, what we've seen with ayahuasca, when you have these experiences, it is pure. Yes. Right? And so, like, how could I get mad at her for sharing her pure truth?
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I got to when I was on my journeys. And like, even though I had some challenging awakenings,
Yeah.
right? And I had to work through some stuff and integrate, and still stuff to this day that I'm working on 9 months, 10 months later, right?
Yeah.
And so even though I had to do that, and I had that experience, like, you know, you just know that it's pure because you can't fake it. You can't manufacture any of that experience. And so I knew what I was going through, and I knew where my heart was, and I think it's great that I had a really dynamic experience, right? Because that opened me up to being like, whoa, whatever she sees, whatever she experiences, whatever I hear from her, it made it more acceptable to me, because like it's an extreme, you're going to have highs and lows probably like you've never experienced before. At least absolutely. For me, that was the case. And so I think my only advice, even though I don't like to give advice on this sort of stuff, my only advice to anybody is like, get really clear with your partner before you go down.
For sure.
That it's going to be probably the hardest thing you ever did, but it's going to be the most worth it thing you've ever done if you keep it pure.
Yep.
Understand that you're going to experience things that you do not expect.
Yep.
That you're going to and your partner's going to. And when your partner does it, and I think this is where we probably excelled out of everything, because I had some areas, honestly, that I dropped the ball in, that I wasn't the best. While we were there as well, you know, for sure. But where we did really, really well was, you know, is just being open with each other and encouraging each other to just, it's okay to just speak your truth, and don't worry about hurting my feelings. Don't worry about damaging the marriage. Don't worry about, you know, any of that. Your truth is truth is truth. You can't hide from truth. And if you're saying it in this moment, in this setting, in this environment, you know, I knew she wasn't saying anything to hurt me. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so it's amazing that when you change that mindset, and you know you don't have to be defensive, and you know it's not meant to hurt you. And
I think that'll be hard for a lot of people though, right? You know, depending on where they are in their relationship as well.
Probably.
I think the key and the core here though is, like, if you were considering going to a ceremony, a retreat center, to you know, a block of ceremonies over a week, 2 weeks, whatever. I think the key here and the core here is communication.
100%.
Number one.
Always.
No matter where you are, and the boundaries, and kind of like a foundation, right? Like a foundation of, okay, what's this going to look like?
Yeah.
You know, we're going to share openly. You know, we're going to. There's going to be some things. We know that potentially, you know, we might have some triggers. You know, might have some challenges, but also, I think, having those sort of like clear boundaries and clear foundation of what it's going to look like. I think that's a really, really core thing.
100%. And as you're saying that, you know, the thing that just popped into my mind, I remember when Hannah and I got married, one of the pieces of coaching that we got is like, you can never just have the marriage. It's, you got to work on you got to work on, the spouse has her life, or, you know, Hannah has her life. I have my life, and then we have our life together. And it's like a triangle, right? And you got to balance all three. You know, you can't lose your independence in the marriage. Otherwise, it eventually will break down. And I think what's interesting about the ayahuasca experience that I had, I don't know if this is right or wrong. Like, I'd be curious to hear your feedback. I don't know if we talked about this. But one of the things that I found interesting, and it was challenging, but I think it was also beneficial, was you work on your own integration. And I think for us, we gave each other time when we went through our journeys. We each had our own integration. We did our own journaling, and like hours and hours of time alone. Where we'd be like on the other side of the property, not like in the tent together, you know,
that was really
together.
important. I did notice that, and it's a really, once again, a really good key point for anyone who is considering going to do ayahuasca with their partner, is that, like, kind of, you know, separate yourself as much as possible when you can. And then we'd do that, and then it was a little more work for us, right? Because then we would come back together and be like, how'd it go? And we both gave each other leeway to not share if we weren't ready. So there was no pressure, but we'd both do our own process, our own journaling. And then we came together and be like, hey, how'd it go? Do you have anything you want to share? Are you still processing? Do you not want to share? That's okay. So I don't know if that's right or wrong. I think it worked for us because
there was a genuineness, like there was no pressure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And I think if there becomes pressure, that could be pretty triggering, pretty challenging.
Let me ask you, this is kind of like a deep question.
Yeah.
You know, I think that, I have never participated in an ayahuasca ceremony or a plant medicine ceremony with a partner, myself personally.
Yep.
So I think this is a really, really good good platform to be able to bounce back and forth about it. Obviously, you know, in relationships, when they do start to have challenges, sometimes it can be that we aren't necessarily receiving something from our partner that we need to feel safe, comfortable, and happy in the relationship. Part to it. Part two, potentially one person in the relationship has done something, or something's happened, you know, in the relationship, or they're acting in a certain way. I think, let me ask you a question. I think this would be really challenging, but you seem to have navigated it really well, and we don't have to get into particulars, but the wanting, like you're going through your journey, you're having your own realizations, you're working through your own stuff, you're releasing stuff that's holding you back. But there's got to be this, like, there's definitely a longing there, right? Like, in the sense of, like, I really hope she has this realization. 100%. I really hope she lets go of this. How is that? How is that? Is that, like, challenging because you know, you're going through your process, but at the same time, did you find that played a big part in it, or it then just opened something up for you to be able to actually work through?
It was a little of both. For me, I remember going through this one experience, you know, and it was a part of one of my journeys, right? And second night, and I remember when we were in ceremony space with like 18 to 20 other people, right? We were on the other side of the ceremony space from each other, so we didn't lay on mats next to each other. We tried to give each other space, especially on our first week that we were there. That was we had some space, and but I remember having this one journey where I felt completely alone and I felt abandoned, and and it was all these things that kept being brought up that I have this thing of not just her but other people in my life where I put so much more into relationships than I get back from people, and then whenever I need people, they let me down, and like all this stuff, and it just came up. Big thing. And it was something that was just, it was a really, really strong experience. And I remember like looking up and like getting up on my knees and being awake, but also still being in, you know, like and it was just kind of an extension of the experience. And I just remember looking over across the way, and it was so dark I could barely even like make out that it was her, but you know, and I just remember just having this thought, like that I wanted her to, like, I don't know how to describe it, like I wanted her to be questioning about like me as well, like you know, you want that attention, you want like I wanted her experience to be this like aha, right, like oh, Chris is the guy, like my marriage is so important to me, my kids, my family, my life, this 20 years means something, and all this stuff. And I was like, I was just like, I got on my knees just hoping to see an epiphany, and it wasn't there. And I just felt so sad and so kind of broken. And once again, it wasn't anything this is all while I'm on the medicine, you know? And so I'm going through that, and I just remember like kind of falling down, feeling broken, going into a pretty dark experience. But in that dark experience, by the end of it, a couple hours later, I'd broken effectively, you know. But I got to a place where I was like, I didn't need that, and it's hard to describe. And so like the next day, when she and I were talking, I genuinely, like, something changed in me, like literally overnight, that I couldn't have intentionally done with hours of intentional work. There,
right? Became. I mean, that's where I think it. You know, if we're looking into like positives, if you can be open-minded and let go of the steering wheel and sort of go, well, that's kind of what you got to do.
You have to.
It's kind of like,
all right, stubborn son of a bitch.
Put it into fifth and let go of the steering wheel. But that actually gave that process and that wanting, longing, hoping, you know, actually was the match in the tinderbox that actually started your process to really release and go through something that was holding you back.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
for sure.
It's fascinating.
And I'm telling you, I went down there hoping that she would have this awakening for me.
Yes.
And for my kids and for my family, and like, you know, because I never wanted our marriage to end, right? And I was blindsided when I thought it was even a relative possibility. Yep. And so I was hoping she'd just have this, you know, awakening. And quite frankly, that never happened. And so what happened for me was I had an awakening.
Yeah.
And my awakening was completely different than I thought it would be. And then I'm not going to sit here and tell you that by the end of that week, my marriage was fixed, because it was far from fixed. Yep. And, you know, we got done, we went into Medellin, we spent a couple days there, got a hotel, still had a couple little spats and like navigating everything, and it was challenging. But because of the work that I was doing on myself, what I realized is like I had such an internal change, and I had such an elevation in my own self-awareness and my own belief in myself and that I no longer needed the marriage the way I needed it before.
Yeah.
And ironically, the less I needed it,
the stronger it became.
The stronger it became. Yeah. And what happened was, for her, initially, it's hard. She didn't trust it fully. Yep. But the more I just kept doing my thing, the more she was magnetized and drawn back.
Yes.
You know, and so then we went back for a second week.
Yep.
And
this was a couple of months apart as well.
A month and a half apart.
Just for reference,
yeah. 6-7 weeks apart.
And we didn't just keep. I didn't just keep like having the shaman pour ayahuasca down his throat.
Give it to me. No, nothing.
You're gonna drink until your marriage is fixed. You know?
We went home, and we kind of reintegrated into life. We kept talking every night. We do Rappe ceremonies every single night, and we made the intention with each other that we were going to keep the integration going. It had nothing to do. We had, like, I was doing my own thing. I was still doing coaching with a group, and then she and I would talk every night. We'd do Rappe every night. We'd meditate. We'd set the intention, and we'd talk through all the good, the bad, the ugly, and nothing was off the table.
Is that something you had before?
No, never.
Okay, interesting.
No. We would read. We would talk and meditate every now and then, but never every night. Never ritualistically. Never with that level of intention. Never. Nothing even close to that. And I mean, the scales, you know, were high, right? The stakes, I should say, were high.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and so it's just one of those things where, I mean, it was a big deal, like, and it was life changing. And to this day, we still Rappe 4 or 5 nights a week. Yeah. And talk about everything. But by the time we went back for that second round of ceremony, 7 weeks later, we were completely different people.
Without a doubt.
You know, and the second round, if you will, I was coming into it not from a place of feeling broken and a place of feeling lost and needing help or needing to find myself. I went into I went in with a mindset of expansion.
I think the second time you came down,
oh my gosh.
Obviously Hannah was like super excited to come again, but like I feel like you were definitely you were driving the bus on this. Yeah, you're wearing like the ayahuasca shirt.
But like I was in. I was scared to death the first time, and the second time, like I was all in because I was like, holy crap! Look what this did for me when I was like broken. If I go into this, because I'm really about living intentionally and all these things, and so like going down, like I just wasn't done. I was ready to like keep growing and keep digging deeper into myself, because as much as I had in those 4 days, those 4 ceremonies over the week, like I felt like it was just the surface and I just needed to go deeper. And so
you'd opened yourself up also to a whole new concept of like healing for yourself and growth for yourself. You've opened yourself up to a whole new concept for healing and growth for a relationship as well. And it's kind of mind-blowing when you do experience it for the first time. It's like, whoa, it's so simple, but it's still like so
for sure
complex at the same time, right?
Totally. No, it absolutely is. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of layers to it. I think, whether it's right or wrong for people, I think it varies. But the only encouragement that I would give anybody is just be open-minded and try to disconnect yourself from the result. Yeah. Right. and disconnect yourself from the result and don't take things personally that week. Because I think it's really easy. You're probably going to experience and think and feel a lot of hard things. Your spouse is probably going to feel and think and experience a lot of hard things. Some of them are going to be directed at you. Some of yours are going to be directed at them. And like, don't make big decisions in those moments. Don't let the extremes, highs and lows of the journeys and the days, the ins and outs.
And I think even afterwards, you know, like saying in there as well, like, 'cause sometimes we can get revelations, we can get, you know, just profound clarity. I think it's absolutely important to, number one, don't make any decisions or choices when you're in the ceremonial setting, but also probably even in the weeks, months after as well, just give it a little bit of time to sort of settle down.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think the core though, like really to sort of narrow in on it, you know, there's a couple of big pointers, and I'm glad we've managed to cover a lot of them in this conversation. It's really cool. But obviously, that clear boundaries, that foundation, you know, the clear, very clear discussions about what it's going to look like. I know that can be challenging, I guess, when you don't know what the environment's going to look like, but that openness and that, you know, both, I think one of the cores of making that decision if you're going to go together is I do believe that you both have to have that internal want and that internal desire to be able to, that you want to do individual work.
For sure.
I think that's a really big thing. You know, because if one person is sort of just going as a support person, it could, or they're just going because they just want to like be nice, you know, to their partner, you're better off going on your own, because you're going to be, you could potentially start taking away from each other's experiences. You know, I think that's the important thing.
And I would say, like, you don't have to know exactly what you want to get out of it, but you have to be willing to experience your own experience and really work with it. Because the first time I went, I really had no clue what I was even going to get out of it. But I was completely committed and completely open to whatever it looked like. Yeah. You know, and dedicated to my own growth, my own internal work.
And that's a big thing. But I think the thing that you guys had spoken about beforehand is you're going to give each other space. Yeah. Because one of the things I do see and have seen in plant medicine ceremonies, ayahuasca, bufo, even, you know, psilocybin ceremonies as well, is where you know, our first reaction when someone is going through a tough time is to want to nurture them, especially if it's our significant other, right? Yeah. So is to nurture them, help them. They're there, you know. I think the funny thing with especially majority of plant medicine work, that's actually counterproductive. It's like, because a lot of the time where we get the most growth and where we get the best results and the likelihood of us being able to release the things that are holding us back are actually going through that, releasing that process without nurturing, because it pushes us to keep pushing up, keep pushing.
Isn't that life though? We learn the most in the hard times.
Exactly.
You know, like, and it's just amplified.
Yeah. So I think if you were a person, if you were considering, and let's say for instance you weren't the idea person, the front, you weren't the front. What's the word? Frontier. What's the?
You weren't the trailblazer.
You weren't the trailblazer of this idea
concept.
You know, is to really make sure that you are. Not nurturing. You know, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but this is an environment where you really have to go towards the pain. You have to go towards the challenges individually. So I think
I love it.
Having that conversation beforehand is really important as well.
Yeah, for sure. I love it.
We do that. I think the possibilities are really, really positive. You know, I guess here's another part of it which I think is really important to touch on. Is what are sort of like the cons, you know, like I've seen some interesting things. I'm not going to lie, I have seen people definitely break up after they've been, for sure.
Like, they're there together?
Not together. I haven't seen it happen in a retreat setting, but I have seen people afterwards go their separate ways. Which is interesting, you know, and a lot of that, this is the thing and something to be prepared for. You know, a lot of these plant medicine journeys do give us very deep clarity, and sometimes that can just be like clear as day. So on the off chance, and this is nothing to be scared of, but you do, I have seen numerous times where people have come out of their plant medicine experiences where they've come together and then they've sort of gone, you know what, I don't think we actually really like each other that much. Or one person is like, yeah, you're not actually the person for me. And I mean, that's challenging. They've grown apart, yeah.
I've seen that.
But don't let this be definitely don't let this be something to be scared of when you're going in there. And I think if you are scared of it and you do have a relatively strong relationship, then it's probably going to be something that you can work on.
I mean, the way I look at it is we all just want to live our best life, right? Like, and the only way you're going to truly live your best life is to go deep inside yourself and be willing to face things that most people aren't willing to face. And, sometimes that'll wind up helping the direction you're on be more beautiful and you'll be more comfortable. And sometimes it'll mean you'll make some great changes, I think take the good and the bad judgment away from it all.
Absolutely.
And just be open to whatever comes at you. And like we talked about earlier, don't make massive decisions. Let it play out. Make sure you do the integration. Like you say it all the time. Like the biggest mistake people make is thinking that the one ceremony or the journey or the the week long, you're going to come out like a completely different person and whatever. Most of the time, that's not going to be the case. You're going to maybe get some awakenings to things. You're going to experience some different feelings. You're going to have these experiences, different perspectives, and you're going to be thinking about things from a different lens that you're going to have to then bring back to the real world, integrate, think about, journal, counseling.
There's the other part of it too. As you come out of your plant medicine scenarios, you're not going to get presented with the scenarios within one day. You're not going to get presented with the scenarios that might trigger you might find painful within. And this is even in a relationship. It might be 6 months, 12 months until there's a decent bandwidth of scenarios that are being presented to you afterwards as well. So giving yourself that time and that space is really important.
Totally. I love it, man. So is there anything else that you want to add here?
No.
I mean, I think I can say for me, and we got to get my wife back on. I'll get my wife Hannah on. We'll do an interview with all three of us, and we'll really share the experience because I don't want to go into things that she doesn't want to talk about. But we're a pretty open book. But I will say this: I can emphatically say I do not believe I would be here, where I am in the world, in a marriage that's as happy and not to say that there's not challenges from time to time because we're people, but the marriage is as strong as it's ever been. And I can absolutely say that would not be the case had we not gone and utilized plant medicine to help us get there.
Yeah.
So it's cool. So I wildly encourage everybody, and I would even say we'll put a link down below if you want counseling. I don't know, I'm throwing you under the bus here, but if you think you want to even prep and talk and chat through things, I would call this guy ahead of time because he's been instrumental in our process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to help anyone I possibly can. Cool. Obviously, just even getting a good understanding of the things that we've covered in this video as well. Okay, we both want to do it. Yep. Let's go for it. Setting some foundations and some conversations that potentially you should have before you go and do it together as well. And I'll tell you brutally, actually, unfortunately, I'll be like, maybe not. Maybe you should go on your own separately or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing for sure.
And it's good to know because the worst thing is you get down there and you create a bad experience where you're because remember, the key is feeling safe, right?
Of course.
And sometimes if you don't go down with the right conversations and the right expectations ahead of time with your spouse, it could be your spouse of all people that makes it so you don't feel safe to experience your full true experience.
Hit the nail on the head. Absolutely.
Right?
That's that counterproductive part.
Yeah,
it is.
Totally.
And you've got to be really, really conscious of it.
So,
the more conscious we are, the more prepared we are, the more open the communication that we have, I think the further we can really go in these situations.
That's awesome. Well, guys, if you found this video helpful, I would really, really encourage to go down and hit the like button, subscribe. This is a new thing for us. We're getting this thing going.
Yeah.
We're trying to get this information out there into the world that is going to help people just really have a better understanding. Jarrod is amazing. We're down here running this retreat center now and doing all sorts of different things and really committed to trying to get better information out there into the world about plant medicine, about internal healing, about all the, living a more holistic, healthy, mindful life.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that's it. And really sort of opening up some discussions in regards to how do we take these beautiful, powerful plant medicines, these beautiful traditions which we are fortunate enough to be able to participate in, and how do we take things that we're learning and actually apply them to our everyday lives and start living lives on our own terms a little bit more consciously in the way that we want to. So
I love it. Well, thanks for being here. We'll see you on the next video.
Thank you.
See you guys.